All right, sorry it took me a little while to get to this video. I'm busy, but here is basically a recording of me doing the box project as an example for you. Of course, there's 100 ways to do this project, and I'm doing the most straightforward way to give us a really basic introduction to UV unwrapping in Blender. Hopefully I will receive no interruptions during this time. So I made 3 box covers here in Figma. You can make them in whatever program you prefer, and you can go ahead and export those. So I'm going to go ahead and export these guys here. I'm going to choose to export them at 3 times resolution, just so I get really large files. I think in Figma you can go up to 4 times. And so yeah, let's go with 4 times. Export. And so I'm exporting this top canvas up here. And so I've already made a couple projects here, or folders in my system. September projects, I think I called it box project. There we go. And so this will be called top.png, and I'll select the other side over here, and I'll hit export. And again, if you're working in Illustrator, you would just be exporting different documents. If you worked in Photoshop, you'd be exporting PNGs or something. I'm using PNG files, and you can use TIFFs. You can't use PSDs, and you can't use AI files, but you can use EPS. I recommend using a raster image, though, such as a PNG or a TIFF file or a JPEG. Let's make sure we're exporting them all 4 times. Or 3 times. Either should suffice. So that's the side, and this is side 2. I'm going to redo side 1. Make sure I'm doing it at 4 times. And so when it says 4 times, it's making it a much higher resolution image. I'll show you here in a little bit. Side, yeah, we'll just overwrite that one. All right, so we've got 3 sides exported. Let's go ahead and construct our box really quick in Blender. So if I have this box, if we look at my designs, I wasn't real accurate with my measurements. We're just kind of eyeballing it. You can tell it's a bit of a tall rectangle box. So we'll just make a tall rectangle box over here in Blender. So I've got the default cube right here. I'm just going to hit S and Z to make it a little bit taller. If you wanted to use your transform widgets, I'm just doing this kind of guy right here. Just make it a little bit taller. I'm not making it terribly accurate or anything. We can fix all that later. And now we have to unwrap it and prepare some graphics for it. So let's go over to UV editing. You can see this is the default UV for a default cube, but these UVs, which represent each side, are square because the cube, when it was instantiated, was a square. It was a perfect square cube. Now it's a rectangle cube, so we need to adjust for that. So we have to set the scale. So we'll go with the cube selected. We'll go up to Object and Apply, and set the scale. And then we have to unwrap it. So to unwrap it, I'm in the UV editing tab up here. I'm just going to have my mouse in this view right here, or rather, let's use a menu. Let's go to UV and UV Smart UV Project. And you can leave everything here as the default and hit unwrap. And now you'll see that our cube is, the sides are represented here. If you want to maximize the pixel size, you can go to Smart UV Project and Scale to Bounds, and then hit Unwrap. And what that does is it makes sure it takes all the UVs and scales them up to fit as much as possible a square bitmap. And so what we want to do here is we can either export a PNG file or an EPS file, something along that line. I think I'll do a PNG file today. So I'm going to go to Image, and let's go to UV and Export UV Layout. And let's go to my box project. Switch over here to September box project. There we go. And let's call this UVs. And it'll be a PNG. Right now the size is 1024 by 1024. Let's crank that up. I want to make a 5000 by 5000 pixel graphic here. And the UV opacities are going to be 0.25. You can keep them at that. I think I'll boost them up to 0.5 to make them a little bit easier to see. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. So I export the UV layout. Now, we need to find out which side is which, because one of these, each of these UVs are the different sizes. So there's a trick I have to doing this, and I think it helps students understand the basics of UVs when they're brand new to this. It makes it a little bit less scary. what we're going to do is in the shading tab, we're going to create a new texture, add a new texture, a new image texture. And let's create a new blank image here. So new, and we'll call this just blank. And we're going to change the pixel size again to 5,000 by 5,000 pixels, new image. And right now this image just sits in the computer's memory. It's not on the hard drive. We'll plug that in. It's just a black image, all blank. And what we'll find is when we go back over to the UV editing tab, it's plugged this image into the background of the UVs because it's assuming that we're going to use that image to unwrap and do things with it. But what we actually want to do is go over to texture painting. And with texture painting, we still see our UV layout right here, but what we can do is we can actually paint onto our box here, barks. And when I let go, you'll see how those are being projected onto that 2D shape right there. And we can paint on either side. If I paint on this side, you can see how it shows up over here, or I can paint on this side and it shows up over here. If you have a Wacom tablet or something like that, you can make it pressure sensitive and you can get in a lot of detail, and there's quite a lot of powerful tools in the texture painting tool in the system. I'm just going to undo that so it's all blank. I like to set up my project so that X is facing me, and so this will be my front, left, and top. And so to actually demarcate that, I'm just going to draw on it directly. And so right now I'm in edit mode or object mode in this view, even though I'm in the texture painting tab. So we just got to manually switch it back to texture paint. And if I just draw directly on this, let's make my brush a little smaller. Hit the F key to adjust that. You can also adjust the size up here. And also, if you're a Photoshop friend, you can use the big bracket, small bracket to adjust the size. So we'll just say, hey, this is the front. And if you're drawing with your mouse, it'll look terrible, but that's okay. And because this is just for you. And then this is, this is the left. And you know what? I'm talking and thinking outside the box. No, what am I saying? This is the left side. Yeah. So let's go back to texture paint. And so this is the left side. And then this is the right side. So we know what's that. Notice that they're showing up upside down in the UVs. And then up here, this is the top. It's good to face these planes directly when you draw on them, or they get skewed and distorted because of perspective. Something that some people do is they turn off perspective when they're working in texture painting. You do that with the 5 on the number pad, or you just hit this little doohickey right here. So that button right there turns on perspective and turns off perspective. So it's up to you what you're doing and whatever is best view for you. All right, so now we know where our UV layouts are. And these are other sides of our boxes that we won't be viewing because in the perspective world, we can only see 3 sides of a box at any given time, unless it's not a box. So we need to export this out. And quickest way to do that is right here in the texture painting tab. We can come up to image. It's got a little asterisk next to it because it knows we haven't actually saved the image to the hard drive. It's just in the RAM. Let's go and save that image as, and we'll save it as another PNG. We don't need an alpha channel, so we'll just choose RGB. We'll go back to that same path we were going before. September 24 and box project, and we'll call this blank. I think giving it a name that will help you remember what it is. We'll just say sides, side names or something along that line. Anything works, whatever works for you. Nobody else sees this but you. This is just to help you track your work. And if you want to come up with your own system, you're welcome to do that. All right, now in the quick demo I did the other day in class, we used Photoshop, but let's use GIMP today. And so let's go ahead and open up some of these images. We'll come over to box project. Let's start opening with side names. So there it is, but you can see we can't see the UVs in there. So that's why we saved out the UVs earlier. And something quick that we can do is open as layers. So if we open up the UVs as its own layers, then it just overlays that right on top. So we can actually see where the UVs are. And then we'll just open up the other sides that we exported earlier as layers. So like side 1, side 2, and top. So I'll just hit Control and select all of those. So each of those will be opened as their own layer. and you can see they're just now piled up on top of each other. I'll turn off those other layers for now because we're not using them, and then we'll just lay everything out. In GIMP, spacebar both turns on and off layers, but it also controls the handbar. You hit plus or shift plus to zoom in, and just minus to zoom out if you're new to GIMP. And if you want to use Photoshop, that's totally fine, or Affinity Photo, whatever floats your boat. GIMP is totally free though. Okay, so anyway, let's start positioning these box objects on here. And so I have the top right here, and so we'll just hit Shift T to move it around. So I'm just going to move this guy over, and let's hit spacebar and then move this over. If proportions and things aren't right, that's perfectly okay. We can adjust all that when we're actually scaling it. I'm holding down Shift so I can distort, just like in Photoshop. And I'm going to go right up against the edges here of the UVs, so that way it goes over the corner. I find that helps a little bit depending on what we're trying to do. And then holding down Shift, go all the way, maybe a little bit off the sides. Yep. And then Enter to confirm. And then let's adjust the others. I'm sorry about my cold. It's not a cold, it's allergies. All right, so let's, here's this one. It's obviously, it needs to be turned upside down. So we're going to hit Shift T, and I'm just going to put my mouse out here, and then I'm going to rotate it around. If you hold down Shift, it'll lock it to a specific degrees. It makes it a little bit easier to make it 180 exactly. And then we'll just go ahead and start positioning it over here. We'll make this the left side of it. I'm hitting Shift plus to get closer so I can see what I'm doing. Holding down Shift so I can make a slight adjustment. We want it to get right up against those borders. And Shift. And Shift. Click. Graphic designing now. All right, minus and Enter to confirm. Let's take the other layer and hit minus. All right, let's move that to the top so it's a little bit easier to manipulate. Hit minus, Shift T, and rotate. Holding down Shift, Enter. Oh, I guess I should actually, before I hit Enter, push it onto our UV. And I'm hitting Shift again, and let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing. And I'm just hitting spacebar to do the quick pan and zoom around just like you do in Photoshop. Let's move that right up against the border. Right there. And then make sure we're right up against the border at the top corner as well. Okay. Little things that I add to my box materials to make them look more convincing. I add little doodads at the bottom. I know it's upside down right now, but things like the net weight, seals of approval, and stars and stripes and things like that, enlarged to show texture. Those little things lend credibility and authenticity to the designs, and so that way the common folk tend to believe it's real. All right, so I'll turn off the UVs here, and this one doesn't have a complete alpha channel, so we're just going to select the side names here. We're going to fill that layer with black, or you could just create another layer if you want, but that's all right. So now we have our layouts, and so we can export this. Let's go to File and Export As. We will go to Box Project here, and we'll call this Textures, UV Textures. Call it whatever you want, UV textures, final textures. I try to avoid the word final, it curses projects. All right, we hit export. The thing about GIMP is it works great, but for whatever reason, it exports large PNGs very slowly. And that's the only, I guess Photoshop does too, because PNGs are pretty inefficient files. They're like almost as old as GIFs. Trivia. PNG is short for Portable Network Graphic. All right, let's go back over to the Shading tab in Blender. And now we're done with this blank graphic here, so we'll just open up our UV textures graphic right here. And if you're using the file browser in Blender, if you click on these little guys over here, you have a list view with a preview as well as a preview generator here. I avoid this one because if I open a folder with thousands of graphics, it could take a little while for all of those to load. All right, so that's the image, and we'll just plug the image up right there. And there we go. But you can see it's a little bit distorted. So I think our box needs to be a bit taller. And if we hit S and Z, we can just scale it up until it looks about right. There we go. Now it looks pretty good. You can see you can get up nice and close, and it holds its resolution. And this will look good when we print it out. Now, I've already built a cyclorama in another Blender file, but I haven't saved this one yet. So let's save it. We'll call it box version 01 and save. And then before we do a lot of other stuff to it, let's make sure it's an appropriate size. So right now the dimensions on this box, it's 2 meters by 2 meters, which means it's a huge box. This box, if it were in reality, would probably only be about 1/4 meter tall. So let's make it that. So let's say that the Z axis here is 0.25, and then we'll just scale it down accordingly. So it's a more reasonable size over here. And if that's not how you want to work, if you want to work large, that's perfectly okay too. But I'll just scale these up a little bit. 0.2, let's try, oops. 1.75. Whoa, that's not what I meant. Anyway, one thing that you can also do is we turn on our control widget right here and we watch these numbers over here. You can see the dimensions of it as we change it. So if I control it on the x-axis here, all right, I think that looks pretty proportional to what I remember, but this side is a little stretched out. So let's just stretch this. I'm trying to just make all my objects and everything reality sized and not just huge, because if we don't pay attention to our dimensions in Blender or any other 3D program, it's perfectly okay. But when we start incorporating our objects with other world objects, if they are huge, you have to scale them down, and sometimes that can cause problems later. Anyway, let's hit save. Now I have the cyclorama already done, so I'm going to make sure that this cube, we'll just rename it box, and we'll put it in its own collection. So I'll create a collection here, call it product, and move the box into that. So that way we have other objects here. I don't need this light, so we'll get rid of that light. Now let's import our cyclorama. So if I go to File, Append, which is a version of importing, and I'll go into the cyclorama Blender file here, and inside of it I've made another collection called Cyc. So if I append that, you can see there is our pre-made cyclorama. And I guess I probably could scale up my box a little bit inside of that. Let's switch to rendered view here so we actually see what this looks like. And let's go ahead and rotate this guy around and let's move it up so you can see there's my little box. Let's go ahead and scale it up a little bit more just so it looks better. To hell with sizes, all right. And so you can see where it sits on the cyclorama. I might move it over here. And I don't like the strong shadow. Oops. I don't like the strong shadow that's coming from the key light. So what I'll probably do is make that key light bigger. And right now it's just rendering in Eevee, so it'll look a lot better once we render it in cycles. But let's change the radius of that light, make it softer. Bigger lights create softer light, but it still highlights the top of it. All right, so I like about this angle right here for our render. So I'll go to View, Align Active Camera to this view right here. And then I'll just select the camera and then hit Shift tilde and make slight adjustments to this view right here. So I'm just using the WASD keys again to make adjustments to where my box is. All right, so let's hit Save and then Save Incremental. Now this looks all well and good, and if I had 3D objects of the products, I might put them around it, but this is sufficient to get you through this assignment. Now to go one step a little bit higher, let's make a premium version of the poop treats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and merge down these layers. So I'm going to right click, I'm back in GIMP. I'm going to merge down this layer to this layer and merge down this layer to this layer. And what I'd like to do is separate the primary text and make a mask layer out of that. And here's what I'm going to do that. Let's take the magic wand tool. I'm just going to select the colors in here. And you could do this in an infinite number of ways. This is just the most straightforward for newbies. And I'm just selecting all the texts in here and here, because I think every product needs a pro version. And rich people like shiny things. So we're going to make a shiny version of poop treats. And so I've selected all of that text. I'm going to go to Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste as New Layer. And so then we see that they've been separated out here as their own layer. I'm going to go ahead and hit Select None, and then I'm going to protect the pixels that are already in there. So that way I can go to Edit and then fill with background color, or whatever color is white. So that way we have these colors here. And in fact, it would probably be better to invert it such that we select this, the background here, and we go to Colors and Invert. And then we select the one we just made, and we go to Colors and Invert. So this will work as a mask for us. So we'll go to File, Export As, and we'll call this Mask, and set that, export. All right, now let's come back over to Blender. Let's go back over, we're already in shading, great, okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna duplicate this UV textures node here. So Shift D, and then I'm gonna open up the mask texture right here. And then we're going to duplicate the principled BSDF node right here. Shift D. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that into the output. And we're going to make a little bit of a gold texture. So we're going to look for like a gold yellow color here. And turn down the roughness so that it's kind of shiny. And then turn up the metallic to make it a bit more gold. I'm just trying to keep things simple. We could add scratches. We could do a whole bunch of stuff. And so now we've got like a gold sort of texture here. If I switch to this kind of rendering here, where we have what you call a HDRI as the background, you can start to see that gold texture. I think I'll turn roughness down even further. So we've got a shiny texture. And what we'll do is we'll use this mask to switch between the texture, the UV texture image that we made, and the gold texture. And we do that with a mix node. So we'll go to Add, Shader, and Mix Shader. So we're mixing together two output shaders here. So one input goes into one side of the shader right here, and then the other BSDF goes into the other side. So what you can see is I drag the slider here, we have a gold side, and then we have the texture side. So if we use this mask to switch between them, we'll just drag the color to the factor here. Then what it's done is that we only see the gold where that mask was. It's a little bit hard to see those reflections in that, but if we get from the right angle, you can see what's happening here. So you can see, basically, we've created a spot color on our texture. So that way, gold here, if we increase the metallic of it, you'll see what it's doing. This won't work as well in a cyclorama, but if you set up an HDRI as your lighting source, it might work a little bit more convincingly. Something to also keep in mind, whenever we do a set lighting like this, if you go into studios, film studios or whatnot, you don't see the studios painted gray. They're usually painted black. So by making our world black, we usually get a better lighting situation going on. Yeah, so now we have the premium version of the poop treats. Let's go ahead and set up an actual render. Let's not do this spot color. You can do it if you want, but I think this looks a little bit better. And I think the lighting on this needs a bit of adjustment. So let's take our cyclorama and let's split our view right here. And let's look through the camera for this view. And let's look through it in the rendered mode. Let's move this light down. Notice how I'm trying to light up the side that I want to draw attention to. So just by making it a little bit brighter, you can see what's going on there, but I think that other side is still a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to move that light down a little bit, just so I can adjust the height and the brightness rather. All right, good. Now we've done all of that. I've saved incremental. Let's switch our renderer to solid and solid. Let's make sure our render engine is set to use the optics, and under edit preferences, we're going to use optics or CUDA depending on your system. If you're on a Mac, you might use HIP or One API. I think that might be for the new Intel Arc GPUs. All right, so we're going to switch our render engine from Eevee to Cycles now, and I'm making sure I'm using the GPU as my render device and not the what you might call it, the CPU. Yeah. All right. So let's see our render view here and switch to render. There we go. So that's looking all right. I think what I'll do for the time being is I'll make some adjustments. Let's turn up a coat, so that way we can try to create a look of a sheen or something like that. Turn down the roughness on that. Basically, I'm just trying to make it look like it's wrapped up a little bit. Something that I think really helps when we're trying to sweeten these projects up a little bit is notice how sharp the corners are, and boxes don't have sharp edges like that. So what I like to do is go over to our modifiers, and let's add, under generate, let's add a slight bevel to that. Now, of course, that's not a slight bevel. What we want it to be is like 0.01, and then increase the segments to like 3. And what that does is it rounds off the edges for us a little bit. And there's other ways to do a bevel, but this is a quick way for this project. And so that way the box doesn't look quite as artificial if it's got some slight bevel to the edge to it. I think that makes it just stand out a little bit better. What I also think I'll do is adjust the lights a little bit more. Like the key light might be a bit too bright. So let's just go ahead and adjust brightnesses. See if we can get more contrast out of it. Yeah, there we go. And maybe let's come over to our lighting effects, and let's go to color management, and let's change our look here from no look to, let's maybe change it to high contrast. That's okay. And maybe dip down the exposure a little bit. All right. And then let's try a couple other things here that I like to do to tweak these. Right now, the focal length of my camera is 40. We can try experimenting with that, changing it to 30, and then moving our camera a little bit closer to the box. With a lower focal length, you get a more exaggerated perspective effect, and that makes our box more boxy. Okay, good. Let's save it, and let's set up a render. So just like the ceramics project, we are going to choose a 4K resolution. So I go up and choose one of these 4K guys. And under our render panel here, I'm going to turn off denoise. And I'm going to turn down samples. For something like this, we should be able to get a pretty good render without a whole lot of noise. Let's change that to maybe 2056. All right, and that should be all that we need to do a basic render for this project. So let's always hit save, and then I go over to my rendering tab, and I go to render image, and it renders. And if you wanted to play around with the gold spot treatment, you can do that. I've got another idea for that, but I tend to make things more complicated than they really should be. So right now, and this is on my more powerful computer, it says that it's got about a minute left to render this. You can see it's really speeding up there. And so that's one tile, and now it's doing the other tile. And when that's done, we will export that out as a TIFF file that we can then print out. And some things that you might want to play around with, I'm going to hit escape. Sometimes when we're doing product shots, instead of doing them on these matte surfaces, you can play around with the cyclorama. So I've selected the cyclorama's material now, and it doesn't have one, so we'll just give it a new material. And let's just go ahead and turn down roughness on that. And what you'll see is that, yeah, we've got a little bit of a reflection, and we want to be wary of that. But if we tilt the camera down, we'll get some more of the box itself reflecting in that surface. Some people like that. Some people don't. If we want to turn up metallic, see how it's there we go, and maybe turn up roughness a little bit and turn up metallic more. Some people like that look a lot, and they play around with that, give the box more of a physicality. But you can see how it's what it's doing with all the lights in the background, and so we might want to not have that. And depending on the light, let's see here if this works. This usually sometimes works, but in the past few times, I think it's a new update in Blender, I can't seem to turn off the reflectivity. That one helps, but it's not completely off. Another thing that we could try, and I don't want to get into this, is let's turn off glossy. And then, so that way, if we select each light, go to their settings and turn off glossy and their ray visibility, then they don't actually have that level of, they don't bounce light, but it still creates an imperfect background. But nonetheless, you have the reflection in the cyclorama, if that's something you wanted to try. Whenever you add more reflectivity or glossy objects, it does increase the render time, because you have to increase the noise of your scene. I don't like this. I'm going to turn this down. But you can play around with changing the set color if you want, by changing the light colors or whatever you need to do. Or you can just try, let's just try duplicating the box a few times. So we've got the box here. I'm just looking straight down on it. I'm going to hit Shift D. Let's look through the camera over here so we see what we're seeing. Just go to rendered mode here. Close the end panel. I don't need that right now. And let's just rotate that a little bit. And Shift D. Shift D. Just let us see the other side. Shift D. And then model a dog and put the dog in there. No, don't do that. Okay. So then we have the boxes. Shift D. Let's move that over here. So that way we've got a full layout. And if we wanted to try the depth of field thing, we could do that as well. But there we go. So now we see the box from all the sides, and it creates the illusion that there's a whole bunch of them. Or you could just choose not to do that and just render one box. Whoa. It's up to you. All right, so let's go ahead and try to render that one more time. Save it. I like to turn off my render views before I hit render, because Blender might continue to render those viewports in the background, and that can slow down a render. I come over to the rendering tab is usually what I do, and then I hit F12. F12 will only work if your F12 is not set to do something else. So on most Macintoshes, that'll probably control the volume or something like that. I think in the computer labs, F12 will work immediately, but just some of you might have to hit FN F12 to make that work. Or you just go to render, render image. And when it's done rendering, we save it out as a TIFF file. And again, you can design your box covers wherever you want. You can design them in Illustrator, in GIMP, or in Photoshop. The important thing is that you export them out as high resolution images. And so all these textures that I brought in for these boxes were 5,000 by 5,000. So that way, when we print it out on an image that's 4,000 by 3,000, there's plenty of pixels on the textures to allow you to get nice and close to the boxes without them aliasing up. Now, if you were to get even closer to them, yes, they will alias, and you'd have to use even higher pixel resolutions. But for the most part, you should be able to do all of that. Here's the render. It is done. It took 1:30 on this system. So let's go to image and save as, and I will save it not as a PNG, but as a TIFF file. And don't have any alpha channel, so I'll just use RGB, and I'll make it a 16-bit image, and I'll just call this Patterson box fall 24, and save that. And that would be the file that I would turn in. And that is the box project. Thank you for watching. I hate when I say thank you for watching. That's dumb. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button, and leave a comment